the idea that I had was in these 45 minutes is to just share with this way of intervening, let's say, in the housing context and the underlying reflections on the political economy of the practice. Instead of like doing a lot of presentation and then ask Q&A, let's say, just feel free to like chat and intervene and say some stuff. Cool. So yeah, point of view. I'm Adrià. I'm Barcelona based. I'm part of a collective that is in Barcelona, which is basically in this part of the Pyrenees, the Mediterranean Pyrenees. We are we are a collective that's called Holland. We've been doing several projects on different things, but I would say the general frame will be transition design with eco-social, let's say, transitions in mind. As of collective, we are also in transition itself. We are this time growing with our two collectives. One that is a bit more into upcycling of plastics, this more material side of it, and another one that's called Becoming, on futures and hacking and this stuff. Like the main thing that I wanted to share, it's basically this different projects that we've been doing around housing transitions, in concrete with cooperative housing. I will not go into that detail onto the interventions per se, because I put it on the slide, so I will go really fast just to visually have like a cacophony of different elements. But the idea is just to keep this in mind of what we call problem caring. So from problem solving to problem caring, in the sense of that when you go into a complex situations or issues like the housing crisis with the whole speculation and so on and so forth, and as designers we intend to make some change, more than problem solving. It's more like a problem caring. You staying there and making sure that we find opportunities, and these, let's say, impacts in many things, in how the team is organized, how funding is coming, is it led, is it client based, like there's many things that we might not have time to choose to touch, but they are important and so on and so forth. But basically, I'm just going to be quickly covering some work on co-design of convivial housing services in this cooperative, like shared meals, shared laundry, and so on and so forth. Some work that we done that actually we just launched it this last week, it's like a toolkit, but basically like a platform how to build cooperative housing oriented for communities, let's say, so that communities itself manage the whole platform and they gather and they learn from themselves. And then some work that we also started some years ago. That is it's a research funded project on co-design in public and community policies, like different ways to intervene in the housing context from a more strategic or policy level. Like the housing services, it's basically community-led, and at the end what we ended up doing is different interventions at different services, such as I said, like the laundry, shared meals, cleaning, guest rooms, sharing objects, and so on and so forth. We've been let's say organizing our co-design in different let's say stages of the process, from mapping needs, outlining how they want to live together, basically doing a lot of work to make tangible something intangible of the services, and especially in this case of how to live together, something that is really personal, like I'm going to change now from washing my clothes in my own house with my own laundry, let's say, at any time I want, from having it shared. That maybe for some people in the other countries or America, that might be my common, or other countries, but here it's not the case. But so basically just supporting the community to go through that changing lifestyle. Of course, we did research to understand the current lifestyles and projections and what they wanted and so on and so forth, and materialize it in different ways, from storyboarding to theater techniques to so on and so forth. Mapping of the different services, quantifying some sort of like design principles for community-led services in the housing sector, and then just an example of different alpha, beta, and beta 2 versions. Then also some work on, of course, on evaluating and setting. Right now, we're just doing this. How can we make like a community-led evaluation process of the service and so on and so forth? So that's just one of the, let's say, interventions that we're going for 5 years, something like that, the relationship. And then another intervention, as I said, is in this kind of more like a community learning. So we basically took all these 6, almost 7 years of experience with La Borda they had. We basically made a platform to help others to basically not just learn from La Borda, but also learn among themselves. And yes, like basically what it does is like to match some activities and then making some sense of it. And this summer we're going to organize the first community gathering for the community to learn from themselves and supported by the platform. So that's, let's say, the second intervention space of more like if you say platforms or community learning, platform for actions and so on and so forth. And then there's the third dimension that we call fostering system-level change, that it could go from this one, for instance, there is like a text-based vision for how the cooperative housing sector could develop within the current housing crisis, which it happens in a multi-stakeholder space in which we participate. But it can go also, and that's an ongoing research, from visualizing and basically supporting this blurred process of designing the transition or intervening, that right now it's really textual and it's, some people that is really in the core can participate, but actually making sure that we can facilitate others joining the process and making sure, generating this reflectivity at the system level. We also exploring right now is there's a proposal, like speculative design basically, on how could this societal process of intervening in a context like a housing to promote, in this case, the right to housing could be facilitated by platforms, not to put it in the center, but actually just like making sure that at least this layer is there, because the technology it's there and can help. So just quickly went through this, different levels or leverage points or whatever you want to call it, to intervene in the housing sector. Just to give some like a practical example of where we are getting the following reflections about the political economy, or having this politically situated reflection on the economic dimension of where are we intervening. Yes, one of the things that I also put in the video that I wanted to share is this reflection that we did in the collective, basically to reflect on, if we as a design agency, but it could be a design team within a company or designer in itself, we want to have sustained impact. What are the key areas that we should be paying attention? Like the juggling plates. What are these things that we should be all paying attention? So I just explained it now, some stuff around our practice, like projects, how we do journeys, how we apply for performativity, futures, aspects of the practicing design, many different things that are related to our practice. And it's great that we focus our attention in how we do our work. But as you can see, also what I shared so far, it also impacts the vision for the world, which is basically central to this conversation of what are the political economical paradigms that we hold individually, as a collective, when we engage into a process and so on and so forth, to actually talk about them, to literate about them, to go to economy trainings or read books or just follow the news, all this different stuff. But not just like political economy, but a general narrative such as accelerationism, fully automatic communism, all these different things. And what's our vision, let's say, our visions as a design agency, as I said, individually, team, or as an organization. What do we want for the world to become, and how that relates to who we work with and which projects do we take and so on and so forth. So all these different things, let's say, are one of the key things that I want to touch a bit in detail. But of course, well, these are just two conversations of what we realize as a reflection that we actually keep talking about different things in our collective behind these two, vision for the world and our practice. I will not touch in detail, but I will just mention later. But we also put focus on how we organize as a design agency. Is it a private company, hierarchical, and so on and so forth? Also in our own lifestyle, I want to work in this particular way of, social justice and so on and so forth. I want to work for this type of clients. I want to work in this type of organization, organizing in this way, but then I want to earn £1 million a year. So how that our own narrative of what is a life, what is success in life, what do I want, what's my lifestyle, what do I do for holidays? Do I travel the world? How much that costs? How much, all these different things about who am I and what my life project and how that impacts the whole conversation. And of course, finally, everything is related by worldviews. What are our own beliefs? How aware are we them? How do we bring this conversation to the collective, and so on and so forth. We've been holding conversations. We've been holding conversations to basically to explore these different topics or conversations that we said. We said these 5, but of course there are trillions of conversations intervene. And we call them design over tables, which is a translation from Catalan of sobre taula, which basically is just like, eating and then having space for authentic conversations, not, let's say, traditionally posted oriented, but more like human connections and talking about how do we transform ourselves in design. And we prepared some, stuff for you to host one and so on and so forth. But anyway, so as I said, like this dimension that I think is the focus for this conversation about the political economy of design, that we can see it, it touches these areas. We also, let's say, we integrated by different things and in concreting how we organize. This is, for instance, one map of what we're doing in the housing sector. In this case, it's using this framework by Daniela Meadows of leverage for system change. But it's basically just making sure that you put in, you reflect on what is it that you're trying to intervene. Like what's the system in which you intervene? What's the general one? In this case, we did a workshop 2 years ago to how to use the SDGs as a general frame for that. And then in each SDG, or several ones, if your system touches several ones, what's the main problematic? In this case, lack of affordable housing, or what's the main vision? In our case, is right to housing. And then being able to map the different interventions, but not just yours, but also all the other ones in your socioeconomic context. In this case, there's many things that I could share about the what is going on in Catalonia about the right to housing and so on and so forth. This is also, let's say, this kind of political economy of our practice also materialized in organizational practice. For instance, in our ideology as a collective, by the way, this is something I shared in the video. All these links are available in the presentation, but you can access our handbook, which is basically just like the way that we organize. But in our ideology, we share all these different things of how that will be the overall organizational process. But there's things like who we work with, which basically it's a process to set criteria for who we work with and how do we decide and so on and so forth. But also when we actually setting the brief, or we are making the proposal for the project, to actually bring all these kind of political economy dimensions into place. Like, what if it's right to housing? Okay, how do we include that into the project framing and so on and so forth, and making sure that, of course, you cannot go into these overall big frames at every project, because projects have their own time and deadlines and so on and so forth. But making sure that that's continually part of the conversation. And again, to close this, let's say, area of how we organize, there's also something we're calling professional families. So how design is organized in order to promote all these different things that we're saying about the political economy of design, that otherwise we think it might be a bit difficult. And the last thing I wanted to mention about this reflection about design and the political economy is I'm also part of this research project that I'm going. I'm writing a paper. Well, I just sent it for publication in Design Studies, the journal, and let's see if it's approved or not. But basically, what I'm doing is I've been doing a review of a policy design from a design perspective, let's say, and what are in the last decade, what is people actually talking about that? What are they, questioning or not, and so on and so forth. And I outline 4 different dimensions or topics that the conversation in policy then is going. But the general argument that I'm finding is that basically what is going on in all these different dimensions is that there is a turn in attentions toward the political economy of design, and that it will be enriched by conversations occurring in the design of public policies. And the sub-argument, let's say, is that if you look at public policy in general and economics, which let's say is the field of political economy, is increasingly growing to study the outputs of this policy design. So basically going into the domain of actually designers, of what designers care about, which is their impact of their work. And of course, in this, the whole conference is based on the work of Hesketh, Juliet, Bonhart, all these different designers that are promoting the conversation of design economics. So what I'm arguing is that, that maybe we should move from not just talking about design economics, but actually include the political dimension of the economics. And I know that it's a strategy to not scare people, but to have it always present that when we talk about economics, it's always political economy, because it's not like hard science economics, it's social science, and also to go into the economic dimensions or impacts of the design practice. It could be also a way to concrete the politics of design wave that in some terms it was as a general statement. And I will say I will leave it here. There's different things that we are working. You can see the presentation around facilitating these conversations about the worldviews and own lifestyle, which are 2 conversations or areas of work that in the collective are a bit less developed than the others. But I just invite you to check some key questions that we're sharing and so on and so forth. And I think I will leave it here. So we have almost 20 minutes of conversation. That maybe we can move directly to Miro as a platform for speaking. Let me see. I don't know why it's not allowing me to use my camera. Anyway, well, it's not allowing me to use my camera now. Let me see if. Okay, maybe now. Okay. Okay, so do you think that maybe we could go to Miro and just have the conversation while we, write some stuff? Is that okay?
Yeah. I'm just gonna just wanted to say thank you very much for that presentation. There's a lot that you covered in a short amount of time. So I think I wanted a very good idea to go to the Miro.
Yeah, I just wanted to go with give the general map and then have the space to dig deep into whatever we want.
Yeah. Can I just? Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that's for me kind of come out of the stuff that's been talked about. This kind of stood out for me on one of the sessions we had already, which is that trying to find the right spaces for this kind of work to happen is really, really important. We were, there's various people from various different institutions who come along to the sessions that we've had so far. And you become quite aware how some institutions kind of either open up or shut down certain conversations dependent on kind of how those institutions work as well. So I'm always quite interested when you're trying to pick at this sort of political economy of design, how you find the right spaces to do that. And I guess the question about, for me is, how important do you think design studios, design agencies, designers are as the spaces for these, really important conversations? Or do we also need to be encouraging other spaces to kind of make these things happen.
Great. And the rest, what are your reactions besides I speak too fast, I don't vocalize too much, and I have a Catalan accent?
I guess I had that overall feeling that when you join those conversations that talk about politics, social, like whatever label you want to jump into, there's that trend into jumping into academia, but not finding the what and the action and the real impact. And setting up that momentum as you kick it off, telling the guidance and what you guys been working on an actual project, that it's not that goes far away from paper somehow. I can see that it's really powerful, and it somehow linked it to what you were saying, Simon, in terms of like there's some institutions which, when you put some type of wording on some types of context, it's not very interesting to jump into those lines. But at the same time, we're finding lots of institutions jumping into greenwashing conversations and things because they have to talk about this nowadays because there's the SDG agenda and there's a lot of things going on. So more than a question, I think it's that practical side of things that as designers, it should be the way, but it's normally not. So it would be more congratulations rather than a question, because I can see that you guys are really like going for it and putting everything in practice, which is sometimes what annoys me when you jump into this. Like, I would put it more in the social aspect side of things, that it stays on the academia instead of going back to basics, which is jumping on the streets.
Thanks for sharing. What about the rest?
Yeah, hi, I'm Alexandra. I just jumped into this call because I saw I'm receiving a newsletter and I thought it was interesting, so I jumped in. I'm a service designer. For context, I work in an agency in Rotterdam. And I'm really interested in what you said, even though it was a bit quick. I mean, I'm new to this whole format, so, also relating to what you guys said earlier, I think it's super interesting to really, as designers, find a political voice. I have these constant debates in my company. I also feel it's a bit of a generational thing where a lot of the designers that are on the lead and let's say they're more senior, they have this like process-driven and process-oriented mindset, and they don't really look at the political and economic long-term impact that the type of solutions that they look for might have. You know, they're very client-led, while I think in the world where we find ourselves in, it's extremely important to have a political voice as a designer and to really look for exactly what you were saying, Simon, look for that space to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I can, this is a little bit what I'm taking away from your conversation. I'm actually really triggered by this scheme that you showed with the different things that you talked about. And I wonder, how did you actually get to that? Did you sit down and discuss with all of the whole team on, to find these common topics? Like, how do you apply it as well? If that's
Super, thanks. If you think, maybe we can just make a round of comments and then maybe I can.
Yeah, of course.
Super. What about the rest? Zach?
Yeah, I was going to say that I agree with Eva that you're giving us the example in practice that maybe many of us need to find. And I was wondering also about the people who are in there. What kind of, I mean, the team, the members. What's the driving force or the thing that drove them from before to join? Like, what's different from other designers?
Super. And Sharon, do you want to add something?
Hi. Hiya, sorry, I actually got really late, and I really wanted to hear your talk, but I have gone through your slides just quickly, just to get a sense of what you're doing, and it looks very cool. I mean, so yeah, I'll definitely watch the recorded one. I guess the thing that jumps out at me is that it speaks very strongly to the project that I'm working on, that we're going to give a talk on Thursday. And I mean, as I say, I didn't hear the talk, so I mean, just looking at the kind of map of that you've set out, I was thinking about the relationship between like own lifestyle and political economic paradigms, and the balance between those, and quite literally the diagrammatic representation of them. Yeah.
Super, thanks. I still don't know why I cannot put the camera. So let me just like try to go in and out.
I'm just thinking, Adrià, if you are you able to stop screen sharing? Because that might, I don't know if that would free up your.
Yeah, and actually I did stop. So that's
okay.
why.
Well, that's okay. I'm still seeing your last slide.
It's not working. So that's why I was thinking to just go in and out. So
yeah, it doesn't matter. We'll just go with whatever works. That's fine. Oh.
Suspense for the questions to be answered. Oh, he said he was gonna. Yeah, there he is.
He's going to come back. Yeah. Hey, okay, see you.
Great.
Voila.
So yeah, like onto some of the questions. Yeah, like the link between lifestyles and political economic paradigms, for me, it's one of the key topics in this conversation about how do we, get a bit more aware about the political dimension of the economics of design. I'm just talking from my own experience, so there's no, let's say, generalization besides what we've been seeing in our own collective. That it's a lot about personal journeys in each of us, and being able to, let's say, as designers, be much more into, let's say, in the social conversation, and what is going on with housing, what is going on with privatization of water. That's the type of conversations that we have in our collective. We are a bit less into the designer's conversation of this tool or that tool and things like that. It's just the idiosyncrasy, let's say, of our own collective, and a lot of it's about each personal life stories and making sure that doesn't get excluded from the collective, because that's what I don't know. I was talking last week with a friend that is working in Design It. And I would be in contact with other, we explained it in the article actually, that we have friends in all these companies. And it's not that they are not going through these processes. It's just that their organizational context do not allow us for, or let's say, they even can have these conversations as part of their work, but they don't have the agency to actually challenge and implement sometimes high-end decisions about that, like who we work with, where the capital from our organizations come, and all this kind of stuff, which of course, and that's why everything is related, and that goes into organization dynamics, who owns the company, I don't know, all this kind of stuff. So definitely the being able to, I don't know, the reflection will be to how can we create design practices that not leave anything of this out, and actually, rather the contrary, and that's the whole point of this article that we did some years ago. How can we actually integrate them? And how we came about this, basically, when we celebrated the 5th year of the collective, we started a bit like reflecting on what we have been doing and so on and so forth, and how precarious we were, how not precarious we were, what have we done. And it was a bit more like a conversation in the different, we have different spaces for conversation, like summits or chats, or we do drinks as well, or things like that are just basically, I don't know, philosophical, but they are like spaces that allow for a more like abstract conversations. And then we decided to write something about it, and we started, and and yeah, that's a bit how it went. Yeah, like this whole dimension of academia or not, or things like that. I think it's interesting, and yeah, just to stop here and keep going on with the circle. I actually went for academia, so I've been 2.5 years now doing an action research project, and I'm finishing it, let's say, soon. And I think it's interesting both for what it allows. So as an institution, what it allows as a space for reflection. If you're coming from a practice, let's say, perspective, which of course is not, it doesn't necessarily needs to be the same trajectory for everyone. There will be people that it's always in academia, and that's fine as well. But I was in a conversation with Guy Julier 2-3 months ago about Alto, about design and activism. And one of the key things that came is like, what's the role of academia in sustaining, like financially, the life trajectories of designers who are not in the margin, let's say under margins, or let's say do not operate on the logics of capitalism. Because of course, if you don't operate in that logic, that means probably, and that's what we also trying to challenge, that you will have less money available to you, which I don't know, that's counterintuitive. We'll see. But that's also interesting, like the role that academia can have also, or has, as a matter of fact, at least in our close experiences, in supporting these journeys and these reflection spaces and so on and so forth. So yes, it can be like, I don't know, a bit annoying when it's just theory, let's say, but it's also, I would say, it's part of the story. And yeah, I don't know if there's other things that pop up while we were talking.
Oh, can I ask a quick question? So one of the things that I think kind of stands out to me, just even on an aesthetic level, of just looking at all the things that are going on, and the things that you're involved in, is how complex that work becomes for a design collective or whatever happens to be working in this way. If you're thinking about not only, you think of the systems that you're part of, the connections, the networks, like you say, the other designers that you're connected to in other organizations, the sort of the theoretical framework around the work that you're doing, the kind of the economy around that, you know, it's do you think that all of that you're trying to do in order to make the change that you want to make becomes a burden to you as a collective, or an enabler to you as a collective? Where do you see that? What that complexity does for you? Is it kind of against you or for you in a way?
We have it so integrated that I would say it's interesting, because the language that we use for this, we call it, it could be like reproductive and productive task, like put it in these terms, as of, you know, using the feminist economy terms. But it's not just productive and reproductive tasks as an organization or collective, but also in finding design work, if you will, no? Like there's all this dimension that you mentioned. I personally will not take it as a burden, and there is, and we just had the yearly summit, let's say, and there is always this ongoing conversation of like, but again, I don't know if it's just like a narrative that it's imposed, or that it's, you know, redundant or whatever, that it's, yeah, useful for capital accumulation or whatever it is, economic logics of just focus on the productive side of it, you know, because in our case, the work will not be the same. Like the pace, I think there's something about the pace of how we do this work, that it's not like la 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 la. It's more about, you know, we are in this problem space, and then we will find projects, and the way in which we find the projects, that's also different. And I think that touches to important things of how do we do business development. Because it's not like that we do it like, yeah, we have this offering, buy this thing and so on and so forth. A lot of it is self-initiated. A lot of it is by being in the spaces where people who are caring with the same project that you being, and then when tasks arise, you are a designer, has some competencies, which most of the time you probably don't do any design work. You're just like there so intervenes with the whole activism time that you put in your whole life of afternoons or things like that. So then being able to find funding opportunities when the opportunity comes. I don't know, you mentioned before a question about the team behind the different projects in Laborda. It's different, like, and that's the thing. I personally myself, I'm involved because I decided, I don't know, almost 7 or 6 years ago that I wanted that to be something of my personal life. I'm now living in this cooperative, but the people in the collective have been coming and going to the project depending on different things of interest, or because there was a budget available and then therefore they could join if they don't have much interest or they don't have that much time. So the way in which the design work is organized is also goes beyond a traditional economic understanding of work, which it goes into the reproductive work, informal work, care work, community work. Like there's other ways of this, at least in Catalonia, there's all this ongoing conversation about plural economies. So going beyond orthodox economy of everything, just paying attention to what is paid, let's say, and all these types of economies in plural, and basically how design interjects or assumes the different economies, and make sure that that is sustainable, there is no precarious, that it has meaning and things like that, and maybe we should sit down and put a bit of all this nebulosa in a more storytelling, clear way, because I'm sure that we can learn a lot from how others are doing it. But that's a key question of we are beyond this way of organizing design work, and sometimes even we're going out of the closet in terms of how we explain these projects, because sometimes you go to a conference and you explain these things like, yeah, but we actually, part of the work, it wasn't paid, and you feel really like that is less design work, that has less value, because it hasn't been, the traditional, I'm going to find a client who's going to pay advance and there's going to be, no, I'm just proud of the way I'm doing design and the way I'm doing it. Just the important key thing here is, like, again, to not go into precarization logics, because then we will go, it's the same way of being precarious, in a multinational design company with lots of money, but then, having your soul a bit dry, than if you are just working in this collective, but, putting a lot of work and not being able to sustain your life projects and in a healthy manner. So that's in our situation, which is a design collective working for, post-cooperative society and so on and so forth. That's the focus that we have on how can we keep going with this, dignifying design work in this context.